My name is Rachel Simmons. I'm 29, and I always thought I understood the rules of love, trust, and shared life. I'd built a cozy world with Stephen Garcia, my boyfriend of 3 years, a small, sunlit apartment in Seattle, our routines carefully aligned, our lives intertwined like clockwork. I thought I knew him. I was about to learn how little I actually did. It was a Monday, and I was sitting in the dentist's waiting room, the antiseptic smell clinging to my clothes. My phone buzzed, a single notification that would unravel everything. A text from Stephen. "Hey, Rachel, heads up. Megan is going through a rough patch and needs somewhere to stay for a few weeks. She's moving in tonight. I know it's sudden, but it's not negotiable. She's in a bad spot, and I owe her this." Megan, Stephen's ex-girlfriend, the one he dated for 4 years before me, the one who, supposedly, was out of the picture forever. The words blurred across my screen as adrenaline spiked in my chest. Not negotiable. In the apartment we shared, where we split everything down the middle, my apartment, my security deposit, my life. And now it wasn't mine anymore. I sat there, trying to swallow, literally and figuratively, as the dentist's cold chair felt like a coffin for my trust. My mouth was numb from the Novocaine, but nothing could dull the betrayal. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling. I typed the only thing I could think of. "All good, Stephen. Handle it however you need." It felt like throwing a white flag into a hurricane. I left the dentist, my legs carrying me on autopilot back to work. Everything had to look normal. My coworkers saw me smile, asked about my weekend, and I answered with vague words that disguised the storm raging inside me. Once at my desk, I started making calls. First, Jerome, a friend with a spare room. "I might crash for a few nights," I said, trying to sound casual. He didn't question me. Next, Mr. Anderson, the landlord. He explained I needed to give 30 days' notice to remove myself from the lease, but that, if both parties agreed, it could be expedited. Perfect. Then my cousin, who owned a moving company, confirmed a truck was available that evening. By 5 p.m., I was home. Stephen hadn't yet returned. I moved deliberately, methodically, as if packing my life into cardboard boxes could restore the control he had just stolen. My clothes, my electronics, my kitchenware, everything I bought, everything I worked for, went into the truck. I left Stephen and Megan's belongings untouched, including the saggy futon Megan brought from her old apartment. By 7 p.m., the apartment was sparse but still lived in. I sat at the counter, my fingers hovering over paper as I wrote a letter. I wasn't sure he would read calmly. "Stephen, you said Megan moving in wasn't negotiable. I respect that. You made your choice about what you need. I made mine. I've moved out and initiated my removal from the lease. Mr. Anderson has your contact info for the transfer. The full rent, $1,050, is due on the 1st. The security deposit, entirely mine, will be returned to me. Utilities are in my name. I'll cancel them tomorrow at noon. Keys on the counter. Apartment spotless. Best of luck." I took photos of the apartment, every corner meticulously documented, then sent an email to Mr. Anderson confirming my move out and providing Stephen as the sole contact. By 8 p.m., I was at Jerome's, beer in hand, phone off. I felt a rare, dizzying sense of freedom, the kind that only comes when you tear off a bandage that's been peeling slowly for months. Little did I know, the storm had just begun. Within hours, my phone would light up with frantic calls, guilt-laden texts, and manipulations designed to reel me back in. Stephen would try every tactic: confusion, anger, heartbreak. And Megan, well, Megan would quietly watch the chaos unfold, smiling behind the screen, knowing she'd already won the first battle. I wasn't ready for them yet, not tonight. The moment I stepped back into the apartment, I realized just how much it held me, how much I had intertwined my life with Stephen's. Every cushion, every framed photo, every mug in the cupboard was a silent witness to our routines, our shared laughter. And yet, tonight, it had become a battlefield. I moved deliberately, almost ritualistically. Each item I packed into boxes, I whispered a quiet farewell to: my clothes, my laptop, my kitchenware, the books I'd collected painstakingly over the years. I left behind Stephen's things untouched. Megan's old futon, the mismatched throw pillows, her collection of knickknacks, they stayed. I didn't want to fuel arguments. I only wanted my autonomy. Before leaving, I wrote a letter I knew would pierce through the chaos. Stephen, Megan moving in is not negotiable. I respect your choice. I am making mine. I've moved out and initiated my removal from the lease. Mr. Anderson has your contact info. Full rent is your responsibility. The security deposit, paid entirely by me, will be returned to me. Utilities in my name will be canceled. Keys on the counter. Apartment left spotless. I photographed every corner, every surface, documenting a home I had cherished. Then I emailed Mr. Anderson, confirming my move out. Every step was precise, controlled. Every step reminded me that boundaries were not just words, they were actions. By the time I reached Jerome's apartment, the Seattle streets were bathed in twilight. I sank onto his worn couch, phone turned off, and allowed myself a moment of relief. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. I wasn't running anymore. I was moving. But the storm wasn't over. Within an hour, my phone buzzed incessantly. Stephen had discovered the letter. His messages ranged from disbelief to rage. "Rachel, what the hell is this? Where are you? This isn't funny. You can't just leave. You took the TV. Are you serious? Megan has nowhere to sleep properly. Stop being immature. Come home so we can talk." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. For weeks, I had been anticipating this. Stephen's guilt-tripping, his veiled threats, the emotional manipulation he always hid behind charm. I blocked his number, blocked Megan, blocked anyone who might try to force me back into a fight I had no intention of joining. At Jerome's, the quiet was intoxicating. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant murmur of the street, the clink of my beer against the glass. It was grounding. I thought about the apartment I had left behind, the life that had seemed so stable, so predictable. And yet it wasn't mine anymore. Not fully. Not if he could hand it over to his ex without a single discussion. For the first time, I realized something essential. This was a test of boundaries, and I had passed. It wasn't about who was right or wrong. It was about asserting control over my own life. Every box I packed, every call I ignored, every photo I took was a line drawn in the sand. And somewhere, I knew Megan was watching. Quietly, confidently. She had won the first round by showing up in our lives unannounced. But the next moves would be mine. As I settled into Jerome's spare room that night, a sense of calm settled over me. I allowed myself a small, triumphant smile. For now, I had chosen myself. And that choice, I knew, would ripple far beyond a single night. By the next morning, my phone was a battlefield. 63 texts, 19 missed calls, all from Stephen, all from Megan, all from a world I had just stepped out of, but that refused to let me go. "Rachel, where are you? Pick up. This isn't funny. You took everything. You're being cruel. Megan has nowhere to sleep." I didn't respond. Each buzz of my phone was a test of my patience, a test of my resolve. I had anticipated anger, maybe confusion, but this was something else entirely. It was escalation, the kind that thrived on social pressure. Then the text started to spread beyond him. Stephen's sister, his friends, even his coworker Carly reached out, guilt dripping from every word. "How could you abandon him over a friend in need? Megan is practically homeless. Aren't you ashamed?" It was like being trapped in a storm with no roof. But I held my ground. I read each message, then deleted or blocked, keeping only the documentation I might need for legal protection. Megan, quiet at first, began to emerge from the shadows. A text from her, carefully crafted. "Hey Rachel, I don't know why you're making this so hard. Stephen and I are just trying to get through this. Can you not be so dramatic?" Her tone was calm, deceptively sweet, designed to unsettle. I could almost hear the smile behind her words. She wasn't there to apologize or help. She was there to assert control. I thought back to the apartment, every piece of my life I had left behind for her to step into. It hit me. Megan had already won one round by making her presence unavoidable. But she hadn't accounted for one thing, me refusing to engage. Social media turned into another battlefield. Stephen posted vague, sympathetic updates, painting me as the villain. His friends commented, his family speculated. Each notification felt like a hand, trying to pull me back into a life I had already walked out of. I focused on small victories. Jerome's couch became my refuge. My own mind became my fortress. Each day I ignored them was a day they couldn't control me. The storm raged on, but I could hear the eye forming, a quiet clarity forming inside me. And through it all, I realized something essential. People who try to manipulate through guilt, anger, or social pressure rarely do so because they are right. They do it because they want to control your response. And I refuse to give them that power. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was observing. I was calculating. I was preparing. Megan may have moved in physically, but she hadn't moved into my world. Not really. That night, I locked my phone away, letting the city hum around me like a protective cocoon. The next moves would come from them, yes, but I would respond on my terms. And that, I realized, was the most terrifying thing for them, that I had chosen myself and nothing else mattered. By the fourth day, it became clear. Stephen wasn't going to stop. His calls, texts, and messages had evolved from frantic to strategic. He wasn't just angry, he was maneuvering. And Megan, quietly confident, was his silent ally. It started with the landlord, Mr. Anderson. Stephen had called him, claiming he couldn't handle the full rent alone and implying I had abandoned the lease improperly. I had anticipated this. I had copies of my move-out notice, my emails, and the photographs of the apartment. I forwarded everything to Mr. Anderson. Every detail, security deposit, utilities, keys, was documented and legally sound. Stephen tried a new tactic, financial coercion, text after text, pleading for me to come back to help pay rent, insisting he'd pay me back. Rachel, please, I can't handle this alone. Megan is leaving tomorrow, but the rent is due. You have to help. I'll pay you back. I read the message, exhaled, and deleted it. I refused to be manipulated. My decision wasn't negotiable. Meanwhile, Megan, who had presented herself as helpless, was quietly taking advantage. She wasn't paying rent. She was using Stephen's food, streaming his Netflix, making the apartment hers under the guise of emergency need. Her presence wasn't about survival. It was about asserting control. Social pressure intensified. Stephen's sister, his friends, and even his co-worker Carly became messengers in his campaign to guilt me. Vague posts, stories, comments. Everyone seemed to take his side. But I stayed detached, calmly documenting everything. Each message, each post, each voicemail was saved. Not out of obsession, but as proof of my boundaries and clarity. Then came the eviction notice. Mr. Anderson, after confirming my formal removal from the lease and lack of liability, proceeded with the process. Stephen tried to negotiate, offered to find a new roommate, but without a replacement on the lease immediately, the timeline couldn't be altered. The weight of consequences finally began to fall on him. Megan's role became even clearer. Once eviction was official, she realized her safe haven was disappearing. She tried subtly to manipulate Stephen into returning to old patterns, texting him about her plight, complaining about the apartment, but the threads were unraveling. Her carefully constructed image of helplessness could no longer stand against the hard reality. Eviction was coming, and she had no backup. Through it all, I remained methodical. Every call, every message, every demand was met with calm, deliberate responses, or silence. I refused to be drawn into arguments or guilt. I had already reclaimed the one thing that mattered, my autonomy. That night, as I sank into Jerome's couch, I reflected on the irony. The people trying to manipulate me had all the power in appearance, but the reality was reversed. Their schemes relied on my participation. By stepping back, I had already won the most critical battle. And somewhere, deep inside, I felt the quiet thrill of empowerment, the knowledge that I could survive this storm, unbroken and unmanipulated. The eviction finally went through. Megan, who had clung to Stephen's apartment like a lifeline, vanished the moment the reality of consequences hit. She had no lease, no financial stake, and nowhere to hide. Stephen was left to deal with the mess he had willingly created, and for the first time, he was entirely alone. I watched from a distance, careful not to gloat, but silently noting the inevitability of cause and effect. The people who had tried to manipulate me, Stephen, Megan, even those caught in their orbit, were unraveling in ways they had set in motion themselves. My role was no longer reactive, it was observational. Socially, the fallout worked in my favor. Stephen's attempts to smear me, to portray himself as the victim, began to collapse under scrutiny. Friends, family, and acquaintances saw through the narrative. Some reached out quietly, offering apologies or support. Carly, the mutual friend, eventually admitted her misjudgment with a single pointed message. I see now. You handled everything calmly and correctly. They were the problem, not you. Emotionally, I found a clarity I hadn't known I needed. Living alone, even in a smaller apartment, brought a sense of freedom that was intoxicating. No unexpected roommates, no manipulative exes, no guilt-tripping texts. Just me, my space, and my choices. The security deposit came back in full. The apartment I had left so methodically, carefully, had returned my investment. I used it to fund a solo trip I'd been postponing for years, a tangible reward for asserting my boundaries. And yet, the most profound lesson wasn't financial. It was human. People reveal themselves in moments of crisis. Stephen's choices had shown where his priorities lay. Megan's behavior revealed entitlement masquerading as need. And my decision to act decisively, calmly, and without compromise had revealed the strength I had always possessed. A final email from Stephen, sent weeks later, arrived with a tone of reluctant acknowledgement. Rachel, I see now that I made mistakes. Megan was a mistake. I lost everything. I understand if you never want to speak to me again. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. He had made his choices. I had made mine. And in making mine, I had reclaimed everything he had tried to take from me. I settled into my new life fully, confidently. The apartment was mine. The decisions were mine. The freedom was mine. The drama that had once threatened to consume me now existed only as a memory, one that reinforced my clarity, my boundaries, and my self-respect. Sometimes the hardest storms reveal the strongest anchors. For me, that anchor was simply choosing myself and refusing to negotiate my worth. I was free, and I intended to stay that way.